He never expected his morning to start with the sensation of being watched again. It had been happening for weeks, an itch on the back of his neck every time he bent over an engine, a faint rustle in the shadows behind the crates, the feeling that someone was breathing too close when he worked in the narrow maintenance corridors. He blamed it on lack of sleep, too much instant coffee, and the fact that half the outpost lights flickered like a haunted discount store. But this morning, as he knelt beside his shuttle adjusting a coolant line with a wrench that kept slipping, the sensation returned, stronger, sharper, like he wasn't alone. He muttered to himself while tightening bolts. "If one more part breaks, I swear I'm going to launch this ship into a sun and take a nap inside whatever's left." He wrestled with the stubborn clamp, slipping and smashing his knuckles against metal. He cursed loudly and vigorously, mostly at the clamp, partly at the universe. In the shadows behind him, a pair of amber eyes widened with admiration. The unseen fox girl crouched behind a stack of containers, tail swishing in silent excitement as she recorded another note in her tiny handmade journal. "He strikes the metal fearlessly," she wrote dramatically. "Even wounds himself to tame it. A true warrior." She peeked again, watching him shake his bruised hand and shout at an inanimate object. To her, this was proof of power. To him, it was just another miserable Thursday. She had first noticed him 3 stations ago. He'd been bent over a busted shuttle in a hangar filled with sparks, smoke, and shouting traitors. He wasn't in armor or robes or anything impressive, just a grease-stained flight suit tied at the waist, a shirt clinging to him from engine heat, and a wrench he swung like a caveman attacking an appliance. But to her eyes, it was heroic. When he managed to fix the shuttle using half intuition and half luck, she had decided fate had revealed her destined mate. She had followed him ever since. At the second station, she shadowed him across the market, hiding behind crates of spare parts and pretending to browse whenever he turned around. At the third station, she watched him repair 3 ships in a row, all while talking to himself like a madman, sometimes arguing with screws, sometimes praising cables. She misinterpreted every frustrated grunt and sarcastic comment as signs of wisdom beyond mortal comprehension. By the time he boarded his cargo vessel to leave, she had made up her mind. She slipped inside just before the hatch sealed, tail tucked and ears flat, heart pounding with excitement. She smelled his scent, engine oil, metal, stale air, and a hint of spicy food packets, and nearly swooned. Her people believed that scent determined compatibility, and his was a combination she interpreted as powerful, dominant, irresistible. She found a warm corner by the engine, curled up, and declared quietly to herself that she lived here now. The days that followed were a mixture of stealth, chaos, and devotion. While he slept in the cockpit chair like a folded-up rag doll, she crept out to leave offerings by his tools. She stole thermal blankets from storage and arranged them for his comfort, though she kept one for herself to nest in. She gathered out fruits from alien markets and left them where he'd find them. He assumed a grateful client had tipped him with mysterious produce and ate one. It mildly intoxicated him, making his voice louder and movements slower for an hour, which she interpreted as another sacred sign. Her efforts to help escalated quickly. She sabotaged the ships of other pilots, loosening fuel caps and disconnecting wires, ensuring their vessels would malfunction mid-flight. In her mind, this would bring them running to him, boosting his reputation as the greatest repairman alive. And it worked. He became unusually busy, dragged from job to job, confused why everyone else's ships were failing so catastrophically. "Lucky month," he muttered, not realizing a fluffy shadow was watching him glowingly from a ventilation grate. Every time he complained, she nodded approvingly from hiding, as if he were giving great speeches. Every time he fixed another ship with curses, she scribbled furiously, treating his insults as sacred warrior chants. When he slammed a panel shut and grunted triumphantly, she whispered, "Magnificent," tail thumping softly against metal. After enough observation, she practiced human behaviors to prepare for the moment she would reveal herself. She mimicked his walking posture, exaggeratedly leaning forward like he did when tired. She tried to imitate his head-scratching habit, though her claws made the sound louder. She practiced complimenting machine parts the way he did, calling them stubborn beasts or uncooperative gremlins, whispering these lines dramatically into the engine room darkness. Finally, she chose the perfect moment to declare herself. She slipped into his tiny bunk while he was working late and arranged his tools around her in a semicircle, as if they were witnesses to destiny. She curled up in the center with his favorite wrench cradled to her chest like an offering. She rehearsed her line in a soft, reverent whisper. "Almighty One, I present myself to you." Then she curled up and fell asleep there, tail wrapped around her legs, surrounded by the scent of metal, oil, and the humans she had followed for weeks. And he slept soundly in the cockpit, completely unaware that tomorrow morning would change everything. He woke up with something warm pressed against his leg, something soft and faintly vibrating like an overeager space heater. Still half asleep, he swatted at it lazily, mumbling about faulty blankets and engine malfunctions. His hand brushed fur. His eyes snapped open so fast the world blurred, and he scrambled backward, nearly falling off the side of his bunk. His heart slammed against his ribs as he stared at the completely unexpected sight before him. There was a fox-eared girl curled up in the center of his bed like a content house pet, surrounded by his tools arranged in a perfect arc. Her tail flicked lazily, her ears twitched, and she hugged his wrench like it was a sacred relic. She blinked sleepily, then smiled at him with an expression way too bright for someone who had clearly trespassed into his life without permission. For a long second, they stared at each other. He screamed. She perked up like he'd announced a festival and scrambled onto her knees in one enthusiastic motion. Then she tripped over a screwdriver and face-planted into the blanket. She recovered immediately, flipping her hair back and kneeling with surprising dignity for someone who'd just eaten fabric. She pressed her palms together in a dramatic salute, tail swaying behind her, as she declared with absolute conviction. "At last, you awaken, Mighty One!" He stared. "Mighty what?" She bowed deeply, nearly smashing her forehead into his knee. "Your humble admirer has arrived to pledge loyalty, devotion, and future offspring." He choked. "Offspring?" She nodded confidently. "I have chosen you as my destined mate. I have followed you, studied you, admired your heroic deeds." "You what?" "And now the sacred tools have witnessed our bond." He looked around frantically at the semicircle of wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers, and bolts. "These? Tools? You arranged my tools like some kind of religious gathering?" She puffed out her chest proudly. "They approved." He dragged a hand down his face, groaning into his palms. "None of this is real. I'm hallucinating. This is what happens when you eat alien fruit without checking the label." She crawled closer, gripping his hand like she was trying to guide a frightened animal. "Do not fear. I know humans often resist their destiny out of shyness. I'm not shy, I'm terrified," he snapped, yanking his hand back. She didn't flinch. If anything, her eyes sparkled more. "Your humility is very seductive." He froze. "My what?" "Seductive," she repeated confidently. "A warrior who denies his power is irresistible. You are exactly as the legends foretold, strong, loud, frequently injuring yourself. That's not a strength." She tilted her head thoughtfully. "You also speak with machines. I swear at them. That's not the same thing. Machines only listen to their chosen masters." She said it like it was an ancient proverb. He sat on the edge of the bunk, trying to process the insanity unfolding. "Okay. Let's start over. Who are you? Why are you on my ship? And how long have you been sleeping in my bed?" Her ears twitched proudly. "I am the one who has watched you across 3 stations. I studied your patterns. I learned your preferences. I witnessed your triumphs." He blanched. "You stalked me?" "Yes." "That's not romantic." "It is in my culture." He groaned again. "What culture is this?" She launched into an explanation that made his head spin. Her people believed mates should observe each other silently, proving commitment through secret acts of devotion. She explained how she had followed him station to station, hiding behind crates and ducts, admiring every grunt, mutter, and poorly thrown wrench. he interrupted with a horrified whisper. Wait. Wait. Did you sabotage other pilots' ships? She beamed. Of course. I loosened things. I disconnected wires. I stole small but important parts. And they all came to you for repairs, just as intended. His jaw dropped open. That was you? It brought you glory. It brought me insomnia. She tilted her head, confused by his distress. Do you not want glory? I want sleep. She nodded sympathetically. Then I shall help you. I am very skilled at many things. Cooking. Nest building. Duel challenges. He held up both hands. No duels. Nobody needs duels. But what if someone steals your honor? Nobody is stealing anything. She blinked innocently. Then why do so many look at you when we walk through stations? He stumbled over his words. Because they look, people just look, okay? That's normal. Her tail bristled. I must defend your reputation. No. No defending. No growling. She ignored that entirely. Before he could gather himself, she slipped off the bed, snatched his shirt from a hook, and rubbed her face in it lovingly. She inhaled deeply, tail twirling like a happy ribbon. He lunged forward, horrified, grabbing for the shirt. Give me that! No! She hissed protectively. This carries your powerful scent. I must safeguard it. It's laundry. It is sacred. He tugged. She tugged. They both toppled onto the bed in a heap of limbs and fur. She ended up sprawled across his chest, staring into his eyes with alarming intensity. That was very intimate, she said dreamily. That was gravity. He sputtered, shoving her off gently. She sat cross-legged on his bunk, tail curled neatly, looking smug and comfortable. This ship is my home now. It is not your. Yes. He tried reasoning, bribing, coaxing, but she refused. When he tried to escort her to the hatch, she clung to the doorway like a cat refusing to go to the vet, limbs splayed dramatically. You cannot cast me out. My clan will exile me if I return unclaimed. I am not claiming anything. She responded by marching to the engine room, declaring it her territory, and rearranging his tools into some kind of shrine. Within minutes, she'd stolen 3 more shirts, tried to cook him breakfast using an open flame, set off the fire alarms, and nearly flooded the ship trying to put it out. He sat in the cockpit afterward, dripping wet, hair smoking slightly, staring at the ceiling. From behind him came her soft, hopeful voice. Did I please you? He should have yelled. Should have kicked her out. Should have sent her back to her people. Instead, he sighed. Just don't cook again. Her tail wagged. She curled up beside him like it was the most natural thing in the world, leaning gently against his shoulder. He tensed for a moment, then let it happen. Maybe he was doomed. But he didn't push her away. The walk back to his little outpost felt like crossing dimensions, not terrain. She kept glancing around like the dust might leap up and attack her, and he couldn't stop laughing at how someone who claimed to be genetically superior jumped every time a pebble rolled under her own feet. She kept insisting she wasn't scared, that she was merely evaluating the environment for structural threats. But every time the wind whistled she made this tiny, eep, noise that she probably didn't even know she made. And he noticed it. And he absolutely enjoyed it in a way that he pretended he didn't. When they finally reached the outpost, a mismatched collection of scrap metal, solar panels, and a door that squeaked like it was complaining about its existence, she stared at it with a mix of horror and confusion. She didn't say anything at first. She just stared. And stared. And he waited, arms crossed, ready for the inevitable insult. She inhaled dramatically, the kind of inhale royalty must practice in the mirror before delivering proclamations. This, she finally declared, pointing at the humble structure as if pointing at a crime, is where you live? He shrugged. Home sweet home. Try not to faint. Her nose scrunched. It looks like it was assembled by a drunk toddler. That toddler was me. And I wasn't drunk. Mostly. She blinked at him like she wasn't sure if he was joking. He opened the door, stepped inside, and waved for her to follow. She hesitated at the threshold, glancing down at the floor like it might collapse. The moment her foot touched the ground, the structure made a small metallic groan. He winced. She froze instantly, her eyes going wide. "That was the building, not me," he said quickly, raising both hands in surrender. She narrowed her eyes. "I was not implying it was you. You had a look. I have a face. It makes looks. That is not my doing," he snorted. "Sure." He let her wander the space while he pretended to straighten things. Really, he was just trying to make the place look less like a storage closet that had given up. She circled the room with the same caution one would use to approach a suspicious animal. Every gadget she inspected she held like it might detonate. When she reached his workbench, she stopped dead, staring at the tools laid out in chaotic piles. "How do you find anything in this mess?" she asked. He touched his chest dramatically. "It hurts me that you even ask. There's an entire system here." She raised an eyebrow. "Is the system pile everything everywhere and hope for the best?" "That's step one." She gave him that expression again, the one that mixed disbelief with mild pity. But there was something else behind it this time, something softer, something that made him pause. She wasn't mocking him because she thought he was beneath her. She was mocking him because she was trying to steady herself. Trying to anchor herself in something familiar, complaining, critiquing, acting superior. It was her shield, and he was finally starting to see the cracks in it. He suddenly felt bad about the state of the place. Not because he cared what she thought, okay, maybe a little, but because she'd been exiled, rejected, thrown out like she didn't matter. The least he could do was make this weird scrap heap feel less like a punishment. He cleared his throat. "There's food." Her head snapped toward him like she had been summoned by divine intervention. "Food?" she repeated with desperate hope. "Yes," he confirmed. "It's not poisoned. I think." Her eyes widened. "I'm joking," he added quickly. "Mostly." He offered her a seat, an old chair that squeaked ominously when she sat down, and began heating one of his ration packs. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and edible, which already put it above whatever nutrient sludge she'd probably been living on in her colony. While it heated, she sat silently, watching him with a strange intensity he wasn't used to. She didn't interrupt, didn't lecture, didn't insult, she just looked. "Why are you staring?" he asked. "I am analyzing," she answered slowly. "Analyzing what? My world-class cooking skills? Your behavior?" She tilted her head slightly. "You took me in without hesitation. You are providing me shelter and food. You have not demanded anything in return. Well, I figured you'd yell at me enough that it balances out. That is not a fair trade. It's close." She ignored that. "Most in my colony would have left someone like me behind." He paused. Quiet pressed in. He didn't make light of it. Not this time. "Yeah," he finally said. "I figured." The ration beeped. He opened it, poured it into two old bowls, one slightly cracked, the other more than slightly, and handed her one. She accepted it with a softness that didn't match her usual sharp tone. She took a bite. Her eyes widened. "This is good." He puffed up proudly. "See? I told you. World-class cooking." She took another bite, and her shoulders relaxed. The tension she carried like armor loosened. For the first time since he met her, she looked less like a warrior and more like someone who had finally allowed herself to breathe. They ate quietly at first, the small space filled only with the sound of spoons tapping bowls. But then she asked, very softly, "Why did you help me?" He thought about it. He wasn't entirely sure himself. He just knew that when he saw her cast out, when he saw her standing alone in the dust with her pride cracking around her, something in him refused to walk away. "Because you looked like you needed someone not to abandon you," he said simply. Her spoon paused mid-air. She looked at him, truly looked, and the silence between them shifted from awkward to meaningful. Then she whispered, barely audible, "Thank you?" And it hit him harder than any insult she'd thrown all day. The quiet after that thank you was unlike any moment they'd shared before. It wasn't sharp or tense or full of bickering potential. It was warm. Heavy. Like even the air itself was surprised that she had said something so vulnerable. He'd expected her to follow it with a sarcastic sting or a dramatic complaint, but she didn't. She just kept eating, slower now, her eyes down, her posture softer. It felt like watching a storm loosen into a breeze. He wasn't sure what to do with that softness. He wasn't good with delicate things. Tools, wires, machinery, those he could manage. But a quiet alien woman whose entire life had just collapsed into dust and consequences. That was new territory. He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly, trying not to stare at her too obviously, but he couldn't help it. It was weird seeing her like this. Weird but kind of nice. She caught him looking eventually and blinked at him. "Why are you staring again?" He shrugged. "Still analyzing." She frowned like she wasn't sure if she should be annoyed or worried. "Analyzing what now?" "How you went from supremely offended royalty to quietly eating stew like it's the best thing you've ever tasted." "I am adapting." "To what? Chairs that squeak? Ration stew? Humble living?" She gave him a look that suggested she'd prefer to throw the chair at him, but also didn't have the emotional energy for that right now. "I am adapting to you." He choked on air. "Me?" "Yes," she said, as if he were slow. "You are unpredictable. That's a polite way to say a mess." "No," she said, and it surprised him more than he expected. "Not a mess. Simply different." Different. The word lingered. Not in a bad way. There was no insult hiding behind it, no superiority. Just a fact. A fact she didn't seem to hate as much as she pretended to. Before he could decide what to do with that, the wind outside picked up, scraping against the metal walls in a low howl. She stiffened instantly, gripping her bowl like it was a weapon. He raised his hands again. "It's the wind," he said gently. "Not a monster. Not a drone. Not an attack." "I know that," she insisted too quickly. "Sure." She hugged the bowl a little tighter. He pretended not to see it. When she finished eating, she set the bowl down with extreme caution, like she was worried it might fall through the table. He took it from her and went to clean up. While he washed the bowls, she examined the small sleeping area, 2 uneven beds, one that looked moderately acceptable and one that looked like a fabric pile pretending to be furniture. Her eyes targeted the better one immediately with laser precision. He knew what was coming before she even opened her mouth. "I will take this one," she announced, touching the less terrible bed like she was claiming territory. He shook his head. "Absolutely not." "Why?" "Because that's my bed. It is the only bed that does not appear to have been assaulted by wild animals." "Yes, and that is why it is mine." She glared at him with growing horror. "Are you suggesting I sleep on that thing?" "It's comfortable," he lied. She poked the lumpy fabric pile with one finger. The whole structure slumped inward like it was dying dramatically. She recoiled. "It moved. You probably scared it." "It is not alive." "Not anymore." She stared at him like he was unhinged. "I cannot sleep on that." "Well, I'm not sleeping on it either." She crossed her arms. "Then what do you propose?" He opened his mouth, realized he had no plan, and closed it again. She raised an eyebrow triumphantly, as if she had won a battle. He squinted at her. She smirked. He knew that smirk. It was the smirk of someone who realized she had leverage for once in her life outside of a colony. "Fine," he said. "You take the good bed." She brightened smugly, too brightly. "And I'll sleep in the chair." The smugness evaporated instantly. "The chair that makes the painful noises?" "That's the one." A strange expression crossed her face. Annoyance, guilt, confusion, all mixed together like she didn't know what to do with the idea of someone sacrificing comfort for her. She pressed her lips together, looking almost offended by her own emotions. You require sleep as well, she said stiffly. Luckily, I'm very talented at sleeping badly. That is not something to be proud of. Well, it's too late. I already am. She shifted from foot to foot in a rare moment of indecision. He could practically see her pride fighting with her conscience. She didn't want to owe him anything. She especially didn't want to feel grateful again. But her voice came out small when she finally said it. We could share. He froze. She froze. The air froze. Even the wind outside seemed to stop and listen. He blinked. Share? She nodded, clearly regretting the words even as they came out. There is enough space. In theory. He stared at the bed. Stared at her. Stared back at the bed. She crossed her arms defensively. Do not misinterpret this suggestion, she warned. It is simply logical. Efficient. Efficient, he repeated. Yes. Efficient. She nodded fast, too fast. Conserves space. Maintains warmth. Warmth, he echoed. She glared. If you continue repeating everything I say, I will retract the offer. Right, okay, fine, he said quickly. Sharing. Efficient. Warm. Logical. Got it. The awkwardness was so painful it was almost funny. Almost. She sat on the edge of the bed, stiff as a metal beam, clearly prepared to sleep without moving an inch. He sat beside her, leaving a careful gap. The bed creaked under both of them but held. Barely. For a long moment neither moved. Neither spoke. Neither breathed too loudly. It was ridiculous. Then the wind slammed against the wall. She jumped. He didn't comment. He didn't tease. He just shifted so she had a little more space, in case she needed it. A minute later, completely silently, she leaned just slightly toward him. Not enough to admit anything, not even enough to touch, but enough that he knew she wasn't really leaning for comfort of the bed. She was leaning for him. And he pretended not to notice, because that made it easier for her to do it again.